This session is part of the Indie Author Fringe Conference, a 3 times a year author conference fringed to the major publishing fairs London Book Fair, Book Expo America and Frankfurt Book Fair. The Indie Author Fringe is run under the stewardship of the Alliance of Independent Authors, is organised by writers for writers and is free to attend. Let's see who's sharing self-publishing insights in this session.
Hello, I'm Ian Sutherland and I'm here with Kindlepreneur Dave Chesson. I love that word, by the way, Dave, even if I can't spell it. But today we're going to be talking about how to find your profitable niche as an indie author. So Dave, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? I believe you're an entrepreneur who became a writer second, but you've also had a pretty varied career.
Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, when I was in high school, I remember specifically one day getting back this paper, and I had sat down, I had poured my heart and soul into this thing, and I thought it was going to be amazing. And I look at the paper, and it was a D-. And my teacher, she looks at me, and she goes, you're going into physics, right? And I go, yes, ma'am. She was like, that's probably a good idea. So I did. I went into science. I was a nuclear engineer for the U.S. Navy. I was on submarines. I then became a military diplomat and worked in the negotiation side. I sort of am a lover of numbers, but a lover of sales. So when you're able to kind of use the science and art together, that's a wonderful thing. And that's something I've kind of brought to my books. Specifically, when I started writing, I was not a world-class writer. Even after all those days from high school, still hadn't gotten there. But what I did learn was that when you have what people want to hear, you just have to be good enough. You have to be clear and concise, and you can deliver. If there is a market out there that absolutely wants to read their next book, like, we'll say Ready Player One, right, a fiction book, lit RPG, and you do that, you do it well enough, you're going to have a much better time than if you're writing in an area where nobody cares, right? Or in fiction, nonfiction. If people are dying to find out how they can cure sharp lower back pain, and that's exactly how they describe it, and you're the only book on sharp lower back pain, well, voila, you're the one that they're going to choose, and if you deliver on your statement, you've got it. So when I realized that being able to figure out what the market wants and being able to create that, I had a much higher and better chance of success than if I were just to kind of throw something out there and hope it sticks.
That makes a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense. So I first discovered you through KDP Rocket, and I think a lot of people know you through that. How did you come about creating that tool? Was it something that you originally did for yourself and it broke out from there, or?
Yeah. Well, okay, so when I first started creating my books, I would have this long and detailed process of trying to figure out what's going on in the market. Now, I used to do this before I even wrote the book, not after, right? A lot of people, when they do that part where they have to find their 7 Kindle keywords, they do it right before they publish. But if you do that type of research, right, before you write, you can then validate your book idea and figure out whether or not there's a market for it on Amazon. So to do this effectively, what you need to know is you need to know what it is people type into Amazon, all right, whether they're willing to pay money for that, and if the competition is too great or just enough to allow someone like you in. So let's break that down before we kind of move into that answer to your question. The first things first is I needed to figure out how people type what words into Amazon. That's huge. All right, if there are 1,000 people a month typing in this exact phrase, and there are no books that address that demand, we're talking supply and demand here, right? High demand, zero supply. If you're the person that's there, then congratulations, okay? So first off, you need to know what they're typing in. And I used to go into Amazon and I'd type in hundreds of terms. And I would have Amazon's search bar give me a list of suggestions. And those suggestions are things that people have typed in the past, okay? However, though, this would take forever. And sometimes I didn't fully know whether or not this term had more demand than this term, which ones, were a fluke, and that sort of thing. But okay, so I would do this for hours and I'd create this giant Excel sheet full of terms that are around a particular subject, just different ways of saying it. Then I would go to like Google, and I would, because at that time there wasn't anything that told me how popular those terms were on Amazon. So I'd go to Google just to kind of say, hey, you know, this term has more searches on Google than that term. You can find out exactly how many people per month type something into Google by using Google Webmaster Tools, or excuse me, Google Keyword Planner. They might have changed the name, they change it all the time, but that Keyword Planner will tell you those sorts of things. So then I would do that for those hundreds of terms. Then after I found a couple that I liked, I would type it into Amazon, and I would then look at the books that show up in the results. And I would collect their Amazon bestseller rank, right, the ABSR. And that is a number from 1 to like 4.8 million, with 1 being the number 1 best-selling book in all of Amazon and 4.8 million being the worst, or however many books there are now. So I could get a relative idea. Now, I had a calculation that I created that used a lot of data from other authors to be able to figure out what the Amazon bestseller rank actually equals to. So we created a free calculator on Kindlepreneur called, just type in like Google Kindle calculator, it will show up number 1. And you can take anybody's ABSR and put that into the calculator, click submit, and then it will tell you how many books that day that book is sold. Now that's huge, because now you're not just guessing. You can start to figure out how much money books are making, okay? And in essence, you can figure out how profitable your book idea could be. So we've answered the first part. We got a list of all of these terms, and we answered the second part, which was we now know, whether or not that keyword or that phrase is going to be profitable, because the books are or aren't. So the final step was trying to figure out if we could beat the competition. And when it comes to competition, you need to look at the authors. Like, for example, if you're in horror and your competition ends up being Stephen King, like, not going to happen.
It's not going to work.
Negatory on that one. So, okay, so you look at the competitors. You look at the authors. Do they have a major blog? Do they have a huge email following? Have they written lots of books and they have, a market? Just anything out there that would tell you this person has a better advantage in the market than you do, okay? If you have a giant blog and they have a smaller blog, then you're good. But if you have nothing, then, So you got to do your research and find out about the competitors. The second thing you got to look at is their book cover, right? Everybody judges a book by its cover. And if your book cover can't be better than yours, then how are you expecting shoppers to choose yours over theirs, right? The other thing too is, does the book cover represent the phrase that you're targeting? Okay, I've seen people who have, like, they were targeting sci-fi military, and their book cover had a picture of some lady, eating dinner, and I'm just like, there ain't nothing sci-fi military about that. So okay, then the title and subtitle, and then the big part too is the description. I am a huge believer of the importance of a book description. I think it is one of the most undervalued aspects of your book sales page, because that's your final statement to convince somebody to buy your book. So when I'm looking at competitors and I see their book description, I'm like, man, these things suck. It looks like most of us do, is that the person wrote the book description right before they hit submit. It's like, aha, all right, I got an advantage here.
Yeah, I did that when I first published.
I caught myself doing that all the time too. It's like, oh man, and I even preach don't do it. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, wait, come up. I just want to hit publish. Let's get this puppy going. I'll get back to it. The other thing that plays into competition is the reviews. If the person has 400 reviews, that's a big thing. More importantly, if 400 of those reviews are verified, that's pretty big too. But more importantly, something that people overlook a lot is that it is not just the reviews, it's the recency of the reviews, okay? 4 years ago, a book got 400 reviews. That's cool. But if it hasn't gotten any this year, it doesn't have as much weight with Amazon. So therefore, it's much beatable, okay? So look at the number of reviews, verified versus unverified, the grade, forgot to mention that one, and of course, the recency of those reviews. So the frequency at which they come in also plays into that. So you have all these things. And finally, the last big part to it is, do they have that target keyword in their title or subtitle? Okay. And if the answer is no, then you know that they're not targeting it. So you got to mold all those things together to come out with your idea of whether or not this is more competitive than this one or whatever. So when I started teaching people how to do that exact thing, nobody ever finished it because it was taking hours. It was collection. I had a lot of people who stopped me and was like, hey, I don't know how to use Excel. And I don't mean that like a shot. I mean like there's ways to do these crazy calculations inside of Excel. It's almost like a master course in its own. So I was like, you know what? Let's create something that does all that for people. They can do it faster. And so we created KDP Rocket, which literally you type in your initial phrase. It pulls all of those Amazon suggestions for you, so you don't have to do that. And it even pulls Google suggestions as well. So now it's all right there in a row, and you can just scroll and see which ones you like. Then you can click Analyze on any of those terms, and it will tell you the number of competitors that compete for that term, that exact phrase, the average amount of money that the top books make that rank for that phrase, the estimated number of people that actually type that phrase in, as well as in Google too, and finally a competition score from 1 to 100. So now you don't have to do all those things to try to figure it out. It's just laid out there for you. And KDP Rocket does a lot more than that, but the big thing is that now authors, before they write their book, can quickly go in and see the numbers and not have to guess. You know, they don't have to like think, yeah, I think that's a better term than this one, or, you know, hum and haw over trying to figure out the best way or the best angle to market their book. And I'll one last thing too. One thing that I tell people is sometimes when they have a book idea and they put it into KDP Rocket, or they do the things that we just talked about, they may not find the right information. They might not find that there are people searching for their type of book, or that the competition isn't small enough that they can get in. And you know what? That's awesome to find out before you start writing the book, right?
That's true.
It doesn't mean you can't write the book, okay? Not at all. It just means that if you've done that research and you find out that the numbers aren't there, it means that Amazon will not sell your book for you, okay? So if your idea is I'm going to write the book, I'm going to hit publish, and I'm going to hope that, you know, things work, you know, and it shows up in it. Right now, you know that's not going to happen. So instead, you've got to do the other marketing plan, which is you got to go find the market, grab them by the collar, and bring them to your book. They're out there. I'm not saying that there aren't some crazy werewolf, dinosaur, erotica fans out there or something. I'm sure they're there, but they're not searching on Amazon, okay? So you got to go find them and bring them. And that's a wonderful thing for people to know, because now if you start that book, you understand you've got to create your book marketing plan to do option B, which is find them and grab them and bring them. But if you can start off on the right foot and know that, hey, instead of writing that book on parenting, if I wrote the book on parenting teenage boys, I'll have a much better chance of gaining success and traction in the market that exists on Amazon than if I were just to go big and broad and do a book called Parenting 101. That's the power of kind of understanding your market before you start writing.
And so for those people who don't want to write in those genres, who, you know, they really want to prefer to write the books they want to write, so your advice there is to make sure they build up a marketing plan that will drive traffic to them.
That's right. It means that just using this program or what we just talked about, you can now know that you cannot depend on Amazon to sell your book for you. And that means that you shouldn't be wasting time trying all these other things inside of Amazon, that you should be focusing more on finding people. I also think that should play into someone's decision as to whether or not they do Kindle Select or they go wide. Because if you just did this research and you found out that, hey, you know, people really aren't searching for it, then making your sales solely on Amazon itself might not be the best idea.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
Again, that market research can give you a lot of good information on how you should plan out your sales, how you should publish it, and the things you should do upon your launch.
Excellent. Okay. All right, let's talk about Kindlepreneur.com. I've been through it, obviously, and I find that in the resources you provide in the blog, there's a lot of common themes that crop up, and you kind of see them over and over. Things like withholding tax, CreateSpace versus KDP Print, CreateSpace versus Ingram Spark, of course. Do you find that with all these topics coming up over and over again, that you just point people to the same resources already there?
Well, no, actually. So it's funny. Sort of the same practice I do with writing my books is the way that I write with my blog. The truth is, sometimes my articles come from me having a pain point. Like, for example, KDP Print versus CreateSpace. That article came about because I was frustrated trying to figure out, why would Amazon create their own competition? They own CreateSpace. And they own KDP Print. So what the heck? And which one should I change my books to? So we got to work and we figured it out. And we laid it all out in an article. Gundi, who is a phenomenal writer, she actually had conversations with Amazon on it. She got interviews and we got the real deal. So I was really jazzed about that. But a lot of our articles, though, come from finding out what people type into Google. So just like I did with Amazon, I'm going to Google and I'm finding out, hey, a lot of people have this question. They're trying to figure this out. And so I go through, I do full research, or it's something I have a lot of experience with, or I'm not gonna lie, I'll go find the expert and I'll get them. And we'll put together the quintessential article that should cover any pain point out there on that subject. So it really makes, it's made it really easy to be able to write to a existing market and address their pain points. And I think that one thing right there is what allowed Kindlepreneur to get over 100,000 readers per month.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, connected to this, actually, do you think that some of the more advanced indies have their own sort of new set of questions, particularly in the areas of marketing?
Well, the thing about marketing is that it's changing every day. One thing that we like to do, too, is we'll go back to old articles and we'll update them, because I would hate to be giving old advice and it be the wrong advice because things change. So, marketing itself is a skill, and you just got to continue to sharpen it. And we'll continue to update our information so that we're always, on the cutting edge of it as new stuff comes, Amazon changes things, or just publishing world changes itself.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. All right, I'm curious. You mentioned writers and their first books, and wondering how people should deal with that. Obviously, a lot of people say, "Well, just write the next book clearly." But I've got a friend who's writing a series, and she said she wished that she'd had the patience to wait until the first 3 books were finished, so that she could launch them all together. What's your opinion on that kind of strategy, Dave?
I think it really depends on a lot of things. So, specifically for fiction, okay. I think that, wow, that's a good question. So if you're writing the first book, the thing about readers, especially in fiction, is we like to binge. I mean, look at Netflix, right? Yeah. Man, I'm marking off the calendar for when Stranger Things 2 comes out, and I'm done. I'm getting it all done, just gobbling it up. And that's true. Like, I hate where I'm reading a book, and then I'm like, I got to wait 2 years for the next one. Come on, J.R.R. Martin, Gurm, let's go here, buddy. You better not die before those books are finished. But seriously, it's agonizing. And those books have to be phenomenal for me to wait and remember and then see it later, okay? We're talking like Martin here. We're talking like the Bobaverse series. I'm a big fan of sci-fi. The Bobaverse ones are great. Or Rook, that guy's taking forever to write. And so it's infuriating. But here's the thing. I love them to the point that I am on their email list waiting for the next one. Sometimes you can't depend on being that good of a writer to make people get angry and emotional because your next book is out. So having them grouped together, all right, is great. Because if I just finish book 1, I'm probably at the peak moment of buying book 2. And as I finish book 1 and you say, here, click here to get book 2, if I'm not going to click that right now and get it, then it means I'm probably never going to read book 2 because I wasn't exactly a fan of book 1. So yeah, having them kind of lined up together is a good tactic, a higher conversion rate of the current readers. But if you can't, then you seriously need to make sure to get their email address, okay? Collect it so that when book 2 comes out, you at least can proactively get in front of them again, and hopefully you've done a good job of kind of staying in their good graces while the second book comes out, and you can capitalize on it. And one tactic I really want to give, especially to fiction authors, is a tactic I call the Kobayashi Maru. Okay, now all the Star Trek fans out there are going to be like,
yeah, I know, right. I know this one.
Yeah, the Kobayashi Maru. Well, it's not exactly what you're thinking, but for those who don't know Trek lore as we do, the Kobayashi was a test that was given to Captain Kirk, and it was the impossible task. Okay, it was the one that the point of the test is that you're to fail, and you have to take it right. But Kirk was the kind of character who would never give up no matter what. And he could not fathom doing that test. And we find out in one of the recent movies is that he basically cheated in order to win, because he doesn't believe in no-win situations. So stepping out of the whole, Star Trek film, the fact is that we, as Star Trek fans, kind of heard about the Kobayashi Maru. It was teased at us. And we kind of knew, but man, were we not like gripping at the teeth to find out what the heck is the Kobayashi Maru? It's a defining moment in a character's life that we all love, and we've got to know. Well, what I tell fiction authors is that when you write your first book that's going to be a part of a series, you got to have a Kobayashi Maru in there. You've got to have that story where I'm dying to know what the heck happened to my favorite character that made them the way they are today. You just never tell it, because what you do is at the end of the book you say, would you like to check out my short story on the Kobayashi Maru? You will get an infinitely better conversion rate on people signing up for the short story. The problem most people have is that they have the short story, like when they come to the end of their fiction book, somebody read the first one, it's great, yay. And then they're like, would you like to read my random short story on such and such? No, I don't want to read your random story about such and such. I'm not even in love with you as an author. I loved your first book. I'm in love with that story.
Yeah.
We as fiction authors have to understand that the people who read our first book are not fans of us. They probably don't even remember our name yet. All right? I say it takes about 3 great interactions before somebody actually becomes a fan of you. They don't know you. They don't like you yet. They like your story, and that's a big difference. So getting somebody to sign up for your email list, but continuing on with the story they like, you're going to have a much higher chance of getting them onto your list. And then through your list, you can build your branding as an author, build that kind of love and fervor. And that will allow you to then launch your second book when you're ready, at the right time, and get the most sales possible.
That's excellent. And I actually do have a Kobayashi Maru set up in my series, and you've made me think I might just have to go and write that story now.
Absolutely.
We talk about people run a series there, but some indies I meet have trouble gaining that initial traction in the first place, and we all know success breeds success, and that once you start to make a few sales and a few more are going to come in. But what would you say to people who are concerned they just don't seem to be getting that first start going?
Well, the big thing is that every famous writer to every famous businessman, they always fail and they fail forward. That's the key. They didn't quit, they didn't stop, they didn't say, this isn't for me. They just continued to sharpen their skills and to learn from their mistakes. Somebody who I've worked with and consulted, Ted Decker, who's a New York Times bestselling author. A couple of his books have been turned into movies. I'm a huge fan of his Black series, so I kind of fangirled when I got to meet him. But he told me that the first time he wrote a fiction book, a potential agent looked at him and she's like, do you want me to tell you the truth? He goes, yeah. He goes, it sucks. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, nobody's going to sign this. He literally kind of had to throw that first story out. And he wrote many, many more before he finally found his craft. All right. And more importantly was his first book that was published wasn't even a success. He then had to craft his marketing skills. Because as a lot of us know, when you sign your first publishing deal, publishers don't then turn around and go, woo, let's go, we're going to totally sell this book. The first thing they're going to say to you is, awesome, great, the ink is dry. Hey, by the way, how are you going to sell this book? Just don't get discouraged by that. Continue to grow your skill, but look at it as a business. Look at it as you're growing your capability. When you see it that way, then you're not thinking, why didn't this do? I must be a failure. Like, those are the worst words you can say.
Fair enough. Okay, I read a great post on your site about the best email responders. But what I'd actually like to ask your opinion, you've already referred to email, but what I'd like to ask your opinion is on why an author needs an email list at all.
Well, every author I've ever spoken to that's like hit that next level has always said, why didn't I start my email list sooner? The fact of the matter is that in the online world, the greatest asset all of us can have is an email list. It's the one thing nobody can take away from you. Okay, Google could shut you down. Amazon could shut you down. Even Facebook. I think it was like 5 months ago. Facebook shut me down. I wasn't even using it for business. It was my personal account. I had Facebook back before when it was called thefacebook.com. They just up and decided, hey, by the way, we're shutting you down. I'm like, what? And of course, like 2 or 3 weeks later, they came back and then just out of the blue, it's like, oh, our bad. I'm like, but that's the thing. It can just happen that way. Here's the thing that can't happen. Your email list. It's yours. It's your asset. You've got an Excel sheet full of them that you can download from any of your service providers. And at any point, you can turn around and email out to the people who trusted you with your email, with their email address. So let's think about that, right? When we're talking about competition, and evaluating competition and seeing whether or not you can write that book, when you have a large email list, you have a competitive advantage over those that don't. When you go to launch your book, you can send out the right things to convince people to buy it right now. More importantly, you can grow that out by also getting the people who bought it to then leave a review. And people who are on your email list that decide to take action, I mean, let's just chalk that up to 5 stars immediately, because why would they be on your email list if they're just going to give you a 1 star? So you not only have the ability to increase your sales, keep them going, get above the fold so that Amazon's like, wow, that's a good look, that book's looking good, let's go ahead and put it out there. But you also have the ability to get those 5-star reviews so that from the get-go, your book looks like a great value.
That's great. Okay, good. So if you had to come up with a checklist to offer a new writer who wants to self-publish the first time, what do you think would be on it?
Well, that's about a book long. But let me tell you this, though. One of the biggest mistakes I see new authors make is that they decide they want to write the book, and then upon hitting publish, they decide to learn how to market, or they even think about the marketing itself. I believe that for any author out there, the day you decide that you want to write a book is the day you need to start marketing it. Now, I'm not saying immediately go buy my book, all over the place and try to sign deals at Barnes & Noble. What I do mean, though, is that you should start researching your target market. Okay? You should be looking at the people who enjoy sci-fi military, if that's what you're writing. You should be looking at the people where they are on the internet, where they talk. Andy Weir, the creator of The Martian, did a phenomenal job of this. When he first wrote The Martian, he had his own group that he was submitting it. He put it out on the internet, and he got a following. People were like, "Jeez, Andy, you need to publish this." And what's funny is, he didn't even want to. I mean, come on. Mark Wahlberg would say that, or Mark Wahlberg. Matt Damon would definitely say that was a good idea. So, but he was out there, and he built a following by starting it as he wrote it. And that's why we got to see The Martian or not. So when you start doing this, understand you should start looking for people, not just to buy your book, but to help make sure you're writing the best book possible. If you're writing a book on say, lower back pain, okay, I kind of blanked out there for a second. That's probably a poor example. But say it's lower back pain. Talking to people who have dealt with chronic, acute lower back pain will, A, help you find the right keywords that people use when they're searching for books, but B, know what it is that they actually want when it comes to dealing with it, okay? Maybe a burning question to a back pain person is, how in the heck did this start? What did I do to get this? You may find out you weren't even going to write on that. You were missing a big part to making a very good book for the people. I think that if you're talking to your target market as you write, you're not only helping to sell your book upon its launch, you're also going to be able to write a much better book. So combine your writing with marketing at the point you decide to write that book.
That's very good advice. Very good. Thank you. You must come across a lot of indie authors using the resources that you provide. And by the way, thank you for those. They're both vast and extremely valuable, so thanks. But I'm interested if you've thought about the reasons why some indies can actually take on the information you provide and fly with it, and others struggle. Are there any common reasons there in either case?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to lifestyle. One of the big things that helped me to go from a full-time military guy on the other side of the world to a legitimate best-selling author and then Kindlepreneur was that I made it that I got up at 4 in the morning every morning, and I wrote from 4 to 7. That was it. no matter what, Monday through Sunday. And I chose that because at 4 in the morning, ain't nobody going to bother you. Ain't nobody on Facebook. Ain't no kids asking, Dad, where's my breakfast? Although they do start at like 6, but whatever. And at the same time, by doing that, I wasn't missing out on other things of life, right? I would go from 4 to 7, then I'd go into work, get there at 8, work till 5, got it, come home. From 5 till 8 was time with my children. That was my time with my family. So I wasn't like always gone. I wasn't causing problems with my wife because I was working on what might have been considered a hobby. They just knew I was working hard, but I was still there for them. And then from 8 o'clock on, it was always my wife's decision whether or not I got to work on my side hustle, my business, or if it was time for her. So she would say, no, date night, let's go, buddy. Like, super, all right. But where you start to run into problems, though, is where people are trying to fit writing and learning all this stuff in their super busy life, okay? Where they can't do it at work, all right? But they start giving up time with their kids or with their significant other, and that causes problems. Then they have a legitimate reason why they shouldn't be doing it, because they're hurting their family, Another thing, too, though, is that for me to do 4 in the morning, I had to go to bed early. Okay, I usually would go to bed about like 9 o'clock. That would at least afford me 7 good hours of sleep. And in order to do that, I stopped watching movies. And for those of you who can see all my sci-fi movie collection over here, that was a major sacrifice. I mean, I maybe saw a couple movies a year, and they were like had to be the best, like it had to be the new Star Wars movie or something.
Yeah, that was it. I gave up TV as well, so I know the same sacrifice.
I gave up my Netflix subscription.
I mean, subscriptions.
But it's back on, man. Stranger Things too. There's my binge watch, like we talked about. But the thing is that I had to cut those out. When I cut those out, that allowed me to go to bed at 9. That allowed me to get up early in the morning, and I wasn't sacrificing family in order to do that. So it comes down to, whether or not you can spend enough time, to make this a part of life without sacrificing the most important part of life.
That's very good advice. That's very good. So one more question, Dave. So in this Indie Author Fringe online conference, which this interview is part of, we're running a back cover blurb competition. I know you've got some good advice on writing what's probably the most important 250 odd words of the entire process. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, well, let me quickly talk about nonfiction, okay? And nonfiction should be about pain points, addressing pain points, all right? If you know the words that your target market uses when they're describing whatever it is they want to either gain, learn, improve, or whatever, then you're gonna win in the back book cover blurb, okay? Because if I describe, we'll go with lower back pain, I call it acute, sharp, chronic back pain. And you're like, do you have acute, sharp, chronic back pain? I'm gonna be like, oh my God, this is the book. They know exactly what I think. At the same time, too, if you are able to, if you're able to think of the things that they're trying to type in, like, for example, bullet points. Hey, this book will deliver on X, Y, and Z. And those X, Y, and Z are the things I need most. Then bravo, you've done it. And let me quickly move to fiction, and then I'm going to bring up the encompassing thing that you should do for all of them, okay? In fiction, it's not telling me the story. Okay? You don't want to give me a book report. I don't want to know the book, okay? What I want to be is I want to be intrigued. I want to feel the importance of this story and its significance and the things that make you, scratch your chin and say, wow, what the heck, Like, what was it? J.K. Rowling on Harry Potter said it was she said something along the lines of like, Harry was the boy who lived under the stairs, and all of that changed when he found out he was magical. It was like, whoa, what? He's just this typical boy, and then she drops the bomb and he's I think it was like the owl dropped the letter off that showed he was magical. So make sure that you are bringing my intrigue, but don't tell me the whole story. Allude to things. drive my curiosity. Curiosity drives people to click and buy. All right, so keep those things in mind. But the most important thing you can do for all book blurbs is that your first sentence, I want you to spend 80% of your time writing that first sentence and 20% on the rest of it. Because the truth is that first sentence is going to be the most critical of all. When you look at Amazon's sales page, what do you see? You see the first sentence. You don't see the rest. You've got to be intrigued by that first sentence to then click read more to see the rest of it, okay? Now, that's only for certain Amazon markets. I think there are 2 foreign country Amazon markets that will actually show it automatically. But even still, even if it did show, you got to hook me in that first sentence. And if you don't do it, I'm not reading it. Most likely, I'm not clicking buy. So really, really, really think about that bad boy. Make it like the bomb diggity. Make it be the one that I'm like, I'm still reading. I'm still reading. Okay, you know what? That's awesome. I'm getting it. And the last thing, too, is don't forget to put a call to action in there, okay? Make it a point to let people know to then, hey, by the way, buy. We've done some experiments with book description, and we found that just by the simple fact of reminding people, to make sure to get it now, or to say something to the lines of, the price will be changing. Those sort of things will drive a higher click-through rate, a higher conversion rate, than if you just end it with this, like normal, without that call to action. So just reminding people to get it does wonders as well. When I was working with, and just give you an example too, I don't know if you ever heard of L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
Everyone's,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Earth is the one I read the most.
Well, so Battlefield Earth. That was a book I read a long time ago when I was a kid, and I just actually finished working on his back book cover. And so his company, Galaxy Press, his publishing company, marketing company, contacted me, and the first thing I did was I went to their book description. I was able to look at their Amazon AMS, data, and I saw that they had a lot of people were clicking on their ads, but they weren't buying, which told me immediately that their book description sucked. And I don't want to rip on L. Ron Hubbard. Guy's probably turning his grave right now, dude, seriously. But yeah, the book description was bad. What it was just a book report. It talked about characters that only people who've read it would actually know what it means. That I don't really have any vested interest in Turl or any of the bad guys. I don't even know who they are, so don't focus on them. So what I did was I sat down and we recreated. If you guys go to Amazon.com and type in, Battlefield Earth, you can read the book description I put in there. You'll see exactly what I just talked about. And the best thing of all, the thing that totally jazzes my nerd points here, is that the last statement was that, I might butcher this, I wrote it myself, but for the fate of the galaxy lies on Battlefield Earth. That was my last sentence. Because I wanted to impress upon the reader that it's not just a battle on Earth, that what happens here is going to affect every alien race out there because of the importance of this one story right here. Well, they loved it so much now that they've made that almost like a part of all marketing. So if you see any marketing on Battlefield Earth, you're going to see my sentence up there. The fate of the galaxy lies on, and then the title, Battlefield Earth. Yes! So, thank you. So just got to think about those things. And that's a great example, especially for the fiction writers out there, to see how I personally believe you should construct a book blurb. And one really cool fact was that when they changed that book description to the one I wrote, their conversion rate doubled. So they made double the sales.
Wow,
yeah.
That's right. Well,
so like I said from the beginning, I'm a big believer that book descriptions have a much more important role than people think.
Well, Dave, thank you for this. We covered an awful lot of topics. Thank you for sharing all your experience and your wisdom. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me here.
You've been listening to another great session brought to you by the Indie Author Fringe and the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLI. You can find out more about both by visiting ALLI's Self-Publishing Advice Centre, www.selfpublishingadvice.org. Now, go write and publish.